So it's Monday morning, sun's coming up. Jason and I are heading out from Crestone up to Denver into blockchain land. And on the way out, I just wanted to take a little bit of time to get some footage here of, I think it is the Baca Ranch, the Luis Maria Baca Land Grant. And to use the opportunity to speak a little bit about property. And I know this is kind of a complex topic, and I'm not saying that I have the answer to any of these things, but looking back to last Saturday when we were at the Mormon Transhumanist Conference, one of the keynote speakers, Tamika Tilleman, who's a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and former high-level staff for the U.S. State Department with Hillary Clinton, he mentioned during his speech about, essentially sort of advocating how wonderful it was to have crypto transactions for humanitarian aid in light of the situation with Ukraine. And he contrasted that to earlier situations with Georgia and being on a flight with Joe Biden and talking about humanitarian aid for the country of Georgia and how much more complex that was. And that drew my attention because when I've been originally doing my work into blockchain, I know that the country of Georgia was a pilot for blockchain land titling. And there have been a number of pilot programs to try to get land titled on the ledger. And ostensibly, they talk about it as though this is a good thing because in case of contested titles or what have you, that certain people, maybe vulnerable people, would be cheated out of their land, or countries where the governments are not acting in a forthright manner, that it would be secure for people to have their land on the blockchain ledger. Now, my concern at the time was that essentially this concept of putting all of the land on the planet into blockchain, one, it serves the sort of planetary simulation element, but two, that it would eliminate the concept of collectively held land, which, as we're here out west in Colorado, all of this continent was originally, indigenous land, but looking at treating all of land as a commodity. And so I was looking back at this land grant, which dates back to the early 19th century. And interestingly enough, all of this was between the time it was the indigenous people's land and the time it became part of the United States, it was part of Mexico, right? And so there were numbers of large tracts of lands, millions of acres, hundreds of thousands of acres awarded by the Spanish government to preferred people. And among that included this Baca Grant, which was originally in New Mexico. And then when the U.S. took over, there were lots of contested titles, right? And so this land that we're standing on now went from being a sacred ceremonial place to a resource for, bickering over land in terms of the mineral resources, the water resources, the ranching resources, who had access. And again, this area was one of the first large tracts that was fenced, the open range becoming fenced with the barbed wire. And so I do think that there is this clear through line between colonization and property and the re-understanding of what land is and what it means. And in this, against the backdrop of unfolding Agenda 21, unfolding the World Economic Forum, one of these phrases that keeps coming forward is, you will own nothing and be happy. You will own nothing and be happy. The idea of the circular economy, the rental economy, which I think in many ways perverts the indigenous worldview of right relationships and balance and reciprocity. It is building a trustless world that will be regulated on blockchain by AI, and it throws up the front of like an indigenous collectivist worldview on top of that, when really it's about machine engineering and managing humans as the next element, I think, of wildlife. A lot of this land behind us, because Maurice Strong, when his real estate elements sort of fell apart and his attempts to get at this water fell apart, he and his wife ceded a lot of this land, including the Dunes National Monument area, to the Nature Conservancy. And so clearly within the Agenda 21, moving people off the land, moving them into smart city mega regions, closing off access to the natural environment, that's all part of it, right? But I don't think that stepping back in and taking a hard line that private property ownership is necessarily the answer, especially given that it's going to be on blockchain. And who owns most of the private property in the United States? I mean, if we look back to these land grants, it was the connected people who had the right connections, who could be tapped, and they would just, be handed over hundreds of thousands of acres. Now today that looks like Blackstone being the largest private rental housing owner in the world. They can manipulate the markets, crash markets, scoop up real estate, and they can control it. So even if we lean into the private property argument, the private property is mostly going to be owned by the banks and these large portfolio holders. They're not going to be owned by regular people. And so I don't specifically have the answer, and I'm not advocating any one ism over all of it, but I want to highlight the fact that this is a complex conversation, that blockchain is a central element to it, that as we push back against us being managed as, the livestock, the cattle, within this newly unfolding world of automation and digital twinning, that we really think about what is our relationship to the earth and to nature. And knowing that much of that dialogue has been hijacked by people like Maurice Strong, people who had created fortunes in extractivist industries to mask over their intentions, which were anything but connected to the Indigenous worldview.
Keep going on.
So now I just want to take a moment to read. It is a speech by Chief Seattle, and again, that is the Pacific Northwest, which is a very different environment than we're in now. But I think that this worldview is important, and I'm just going to take the moment, since I have my little YouTube channel, to share it and read it out loud against this backdrop. These are the Sangre de Cristo Mountains. We're on the west slope of these amazing mountains, and again, it's the blood of Christ is the name, and that is the colonizing name, right? That is the name given by people who were going to bring civilization to people who are already here and already had a close relationship to the land that was very, very sacred to them. So this is a speech, a transcript of from Chief Seattle, and I'm sure you'll recognize some of the quotes in here. The great chief in Washington sends word that he wishes to buy our land. The great chief also sends us words of friendship and goodwill. And this is kind of him, since we know he has little need of our friendship in return. But we will consider your offer, for we know that if we do not sell, the white man may come with guns and take our land. How can you buy or sell the sky? The warmth of the land. The idea is strange to us. If we do not own the freshness of the air and the sparkle of the water, how can you buy them from us? We will decide in our time. What Chief Seattle says, the great chief in Washington can count on as truly as our white brothers can count on the return of the seasons. My words are like stars. They do not set. Every part of this earth is sacred to my people. Every shining needle, every sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every clearing and humming insect is holy in the memory and experience of my people. The sap which courses through the trees carries the memories of the red man. The white man's dead forget the country of their birth when they go to walk among the stars. And our dead never forget this beautiful earth, for it is the mother to the red man. We are part of the earth, and it is part of us. The perfumed flowers are our sisters, the deer, the horse, the great eagle. These are our brothers. The rocky crests, the juices in the meadows, the body heat of the pony and the man, all belong to the same family. And so when the great chief in Washington sends a word that he wishes to buy our land, he asks much of us. The great chief sends word that he will reserve us a place so that we can live comfortable to ourselves. He will be our father, and we will be his children. But how can that ever be? God loves your people, but has abandoned his red children, and he sends machines to help the white man with his work and builds great villages for him. He makes your people stronger every day, and soon you will flood the land like rivers which crash down the canyons after a sudden rain. But my people are an ebbing tide, and we will never return. No, we are separate races. Our children do not play together, and our old men tell different stories. God favors you, and we are orphans. So we will consider your offer to buy our land, but it will not be easy, for this land is sacred to us. We take our pleasure in these woods. I do not know. Our ways are different from yours. The shining water that moves in the streams and rivers is not just water, but the blood of our ancestors. And if we sell you land, you must remember that it is sacred, and that each ghostly reflection in the clear water of the lakes tells of events and memories in the life of our people. The water's murmur is the voice of my father's father. The rivers are our brothers, and they quench our thirst. The rivers carry our canoes and feed our children. If we sell you our land, you must remember and teach your children that the rivers are our brothers and yours, and you must henceforth give the rivers the kindness you would give any brother. The red man has always retreated before the advancing white man, as the mist of the mountain runs before the morning sun. But the ashes of our fathers are sacred, and the graves are holy ground. And so these hills, these trees, this portion of the earth is consecrated to us. And we know that the white man does not understand our ways. One portion of land is the same to him as the next. For he is a stranger who comes in the night and takes whatever land he needs. The earth is not a brother, but his enemy. And when he has conquered it, he moves on. And he leaves his father's graves behind, and he does not care. He kidnaps the earth from his children. He does not care. His father's graves and his children's birthright are forgotten. He treats his mother, the earth, and his brother, the sky, as things to be bought, plundered, sold like sheep or bright beads. His appetite will devour the earth and leave behind only desert. I do not know. Our ways are different from your ways. The sight of your cities pains the eyes of the red man, but perhaps it is because the red man is a savage and does not understand. There is no quiet place in the white man's cities, no place to hear the unfurling leaves in the spring or the rustle of insect wings. Perhaps it is because I am a savage and do not understand. The clatter only seems to insult the ears, and what there is to life if a man cannot hear the lonely cry of a whippoorwill or the arguments of the frogs around a pond at night. I am a red man, and I do not understand. The Indian prefers the soft sound of the wind darting over the face of a pond and the smell of the wind itself, cleansed by midday rain or scented with pinyon pine. The air is precious to the red man, for all things share the same breath. The beast, the tree, the man, they all share the same breath. The white man does not seem to notice the air he breathes. Like a many dying for many days, he is numb to the stench. But if we sell our land, you must remember that the air is precious to us, and that the air shares its spirit with all life it supports. The wind that gave our grandfather his first breath also receives his last sigh, and the wind must also give our children the spirit of life. And if we sell you our land, you must keep it apart and sacred as a place where even the white man can go to taste the wind that is sweetened by the meadow's flowers. So we will consider your offer to buy our land, and if we decide to accept, I will make one condition. The white man must treat the beasts of the land as his brothers. I am a savage, and I do not understand any other way. I have seen 1,000 rotting buffaloes on the prairie, left by the white man who shot them from a passing train. I am a savage, and I do not understand how the smoking iron horse can be more important than the buffalo that we kill only to stay alive. What is man without beasts? If all the beasts were gone, men would die from a great loneliness of spirit. For whatever happens to the beast soon happens to man. All things are connected. And whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons of the earth. You must teach your children that the ground beneath their feet is the ashes of our grandfathers, so they will respect the land. And tell your children that the earth is rich with the lives of our kin. Teach your children what we have taught our children, that the earth is our mother, and whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons of the earth. If the men spit upon the ground, they spit upon themselves. This we know. The earth does not belong to man. Man belongs to the earth. This we know. All things are connected, like the blood which unites one family. All things are connected. Whatever befalls the earth befalls the sons of the earth. Man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. No, night and day cannot live together. Our dead go to live in the earth's sweet rivers, and they return with silent footsteps of spring, and it is their spirit running in the wind that ripples the surface of ponds. We will consider why the white man wishes to buy our land. What is it that the white man wishes to buy? My people ask me. The idea is strange to us. How can you buy or sell these things to you, and how can you buy them? Is the earth yours to do with as you will, merely because the red man signs a piece of paper and gives it to the white man? If we do not own the freshness of the air and the sparkle of the water, how can you buy them? Can you buy back the buffalo once the last one has been killed? But we will consider your offer, for we know if we do not sell, the white man may come with guns and take our lands. We are primitive, and in his passing moment of strength, the white man thinks he is a god who already owns the earth. How can a man own his mother? But we will consider your offer. Day and night cannot live together. We will consider your offer to go to the reservation you have for my people. We will live apart and in peace. It matters little where we spend the rest of our days. Our children have seen their fathers humbled in defeat. Our warriors have felt shame, and afterwards they turn their days to idleness and contaminate their bodies with sweet food and strong drink. It matters little where we pass our days. They are not many. A few more hours, a few more winters, and none of the children of the great tribes that once lived the earth or that roam now in small bands in the woods will be left to mourn the graves of a people once as powerful and hopeful as yours. But why should I mourn the passing of my people? Tribes are made of men, nothing more. Men come and go like the waves of the sea. And even the white man whose God walks and talks with him as a friend to a friend cannot be exempt from the common destiny. We may be brothers after all. We shall see. One thing we know, which the white man may one day discover, our God is the same God. You may think now that you own him as you wish to own our land, but you cannot. The earth is precious to him, and to harm the earth is to heap contempt on its creator. The whites too shall pass, perhaps sooner than all other tribes. Continue to contaminate your bed, and you will one night suffocate in your own waste. But in your perishing, you will shine brightly, fired by the strength of the God who brought you to this land and for some special purpose gave you dominion over this land and over the red man. That destiny is a mystery to us, for we do not understand when the buffalo are all slaughtered, the wild horses are tamed, the secret corners of the forest heavy with the scent of many men, and the view of the ripe hills blotted with talking wires. Where is the thicket? Gone. Where is the eagle? Gone. And what is it to say goodbye to the swift pony and the hunt, the end of living and the beginning of survival? God gave you dominion over the beasts, the woods, and the red man, and for some special purpose. Destiny is a mystery. We might understand if we knew what it was the white man dreams, what hopes he describes to his wish for tomorrow. But we are savages. The white man's dreams are hidden from us. And because they are hidden, we will go our own way. For above all else, we cherish the right of each man to live as he wishes, however different from his brothers. There is little in common between us. And so we will consider your offer to buy our land, and if we agree, it will be to secure the reservation you have promised, and there perhaps we may live out our brief days as we wish. And when the last red man has vanished from the earth and his memory is only the shade of a cloud moving across the prairie, these shores and forests will still hold the spirits of my people, for they love this earth as the newborn loves its mother's heartbeat. If we sell you our land, love it as we've loved it, care for it as we've cared for it. Hold it in your mind, the memory of the land as it is when you take it, and with all your strength, with all your mind, with all your heart, preserve it for your children, and love it as God loves us all. One thing we know, our God is the same God, and this earth is precious to him. Even the white man cannot be exempt from the common destiny. We may be brothers after all. We shall see. And so I know that was a bit long. It's a bit chilly out here. My hands are a little cold, but I said from the beginning that I feel like the smart cities are the next reservation mindset for all of us. And as Chief Seattle has said in this beautiful speech, we are all united and our destiny is combined and it's connected with the land. And you know, of all things, Seattle, of all places, named after Chief Seattle, is a center for so much of this smart city domination that is coming. So I hope you enjoyed the speech. I hope you will take it to heart and understand that the complexity of land ownership and possession of land and our relationship to land is central to trying to find a way out through this long-standing hurt that we're all navigating, and it has very much everything to do with conquest and grants of land and connected people and power, and And I think together we need to have a lot more conversations about this. So we're in Louisville, Colorado, and we are here at the site of one of the fires, part of the Marshall fire that happened in January of 2022. And, I wanted to actually, we wanted to document the backdrop here, because I think it's important to understand the idea of how the climate narrative is going to advance, and a devastating property loss fits into that. And then questions about the nature of these fires. I was looking, like a month after it, they were doing investigations into the source of the fires, which my understanding is they were very, very localized. Certain properties were hit, skipped. You can see directly across the street, things were left, unburned, and they were investigating the source of the fires. They called it a prairie grass fire, again, and this was in January, but no one really had still identified the true nature, the origin of the fire. They were looking at power lines, human activity, and underground coal fires. And so it wasn't really obvious what the source of these fires were, and they were very targeted, and it was somewhat sketchy about the nature of what was hit and what was skipped, and how the damage was done. Now, all of these fires are going to feed into the overall larger climate narrative that is necessary to enact the Sustainable Development Goals and the digital identity solutions and the monitored behavior change. And so that is all part of this. And I'm not, I can't say what caused these fires, but they were quite unusual. And I wanted to use this as a bit of a backdrop to the conversation we had at the Baca Land Grant outside of Crestone the other day. As part of the second half, I ended up reading a speech that was attributed to Chief Seattle. And I later looked into it a little bit more, and it seems like there's some question as to whether or not that was actually an authentic speech by him, or maybe it was developed by someone else, or used in some other way. So I just want to caution, we're going to insert this in before I read the speech. I think that there's still a lot of resonance in those words, whether or not they were actually his. There's questions. So I apologize for not confirming that before I shared it with you, but I think it's still worthwhile to listen to. And within that context of property and owned property, I think this fire tells us a lot, because I think we're sold on the idea that if we have property, that we have some measure of safety or some measure of economic support. Even though most people don't own their homes outright, that having a stake in ownership of homes, that's the American dream, that you buy a home and it appreciates, and that's for many families a huge part of their assets that they imagine tapping into at retirement. But the future is always uncertain, and increasingly there's going to be these events like these targeted fires that can take your property overnight, right? And just a wish, and there's nothing that you can do to stop that. And it's important to understand that there's a lot of sources of fires, and some of them have to do with companies that have a footprint here in Colorado, including Raytheon and Lockheed, that provide military support to the Cheyenne Mountain Air Force, Space Force endeavors. And both of those companies have developed very high technology directed energy weapons. And those weapons are used from military ships, but also from something as small as a 4x4. We have a video that we're gonna include a clip that shows how that works. And so literally this is sort of a mobile platform potentially for directed laser weapons. And it's nothing as big as a whole naval ship, although they're mounted on naval ships as well, or on airplanes. But we have these weapons capabilities now. And I want to reference the Future of War, Arizona State University Center for the Future of War, that's funded by Google, Eric Schmidt. They talk about one of their major focus areas is concerns around autonomous weapons. And so the combination of autonomous weaponry on mobile platforms, potentially with directed laser energy, there's a lot of questions about what that might mean going forward in the future. And Daniel Suarez, who is sort of a theorist on this issue of autonomous weapons, he said he can imagine a future where these weapons are used either directly against civilian populations in ways that are unaccountable, where it's not really clear who used the weapon because it's autonomous, and that it can be used to trigger geopolitical conflict, or it could be used to dispossess people of their property. And then we wouldn't know. There would always be this uncertainty. And so you know, it's very sad for these families, the destruction. But I think it does, once again, remind us about how we hold our perceived material wealth in the world and how it is wrapped up in the things that we own, including homes and land, and that is very fragile. And then increasingly moving forward with the advent of autonomous weapons and with the advent of the climate narrative, they're going to combine in very troubling ways. And, you know, I think we've seen even from the Ukraine situation where we start to crowdfund weaponry distribution to various global parties with sort of little control, like literally placing in some cases like rifles in the hands of civilian populations and crowdsourcing through, you know, cryptocurrencies, acquisition of missile systems. What does that mean when you start layering in these highly advanced technological weapons that are involve lasers and maybe even at some point nanotechnology and nanoswarmed? To have potentially directed fires, you know, engineered fire swarm particulates that can target communities. So I wish it was sort of a happier story, but I wanted to revisit and insert this narrative around Chief Seattle and the Indigenous framework of nature versus property, and then also introduce this concept of the perceived idea of having security and property, but it's probably a lot more tenuous than we'd like to believe.